that we study. And I just came across this verse today in the context of reading some other things. I was reading in another text written by one of our previous teachers, Srila Jiva Swami, and this verse happened to be there. The Sanskrit is Shrinvan Subhadrani Ratangapanir Janmani Karmani Chayani Loke Gitani Namani Tarartakani Gayan Bilajo Vichareda Sangha. Hearing of the most auspicious birth and activities of Krishna, which are sung by all people, and singing his names, which describe those activities, while having no attachment to anything else, a person should without shame wander in the world. Thank you. Oh, where are the keys? I gotta have them. If I go banging on Diro's door looking for a key, I won't be welcome back, I know. I've already done that. Not this time, but. So when I came across this verse, I thought, it's really sweet, but it also kind of describes what my life has been. I was going to say reduced to, in a sense, because everything sort of extraneous has just sort of been stripped away. That sounds almost violent. But it's been taken care of. I kind of did a lot of the other stuff that I wanted to do, and now I'm left to just wander, as another verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam says, left to wander the world like a child, and I find that wherever I have gone so far. In some places, I've been taken care of by disciples of one of my godbrothers, His Holiness Giriraj Swami. When I go to LA, there's one of his aspiring disciples who I worked with for a little over a year in Hawaii, who looks out for me. And when I go to San Diego, he's got another disciple who takes care of me. And if I go to Dallas, which I didn't do on this trip to the mainland, there are a couple of disciples there who take care of me, and it's just so nice. I feel, instead of having a small family with me and three ladies, it's kind of like I belong to everyone now. And wandering around the world like this, I mean, what a world. Are we a mess or what? We don't know, and seeming progressively less likely almost by the day, that we're not going to be able to do whatever the heck we need to do to avert a global economic collapse. If someone thinks that there's no weirdness in the weather, just take a look at California this winter. Of course, it's an El Nino. You expect some rain, and you expect good waves. And we've had good waves everywhere, actually, not just California and Hawaii this winter, but God, New York and New Jersey, France, Portugal, Tahiti, everywhere. Anyway, so they had these, like, within a couple of weeks, they had these two, what do they call them? Atmospheric rivers, just kind of like dumping oceans of water on places that can't absorb any water at all. Places that usually get maybe 10, 11, 12 inches of rain a year. And then, of course, you know what that means. If you live in California, you know what that means. It's going to be a terrible fire season. Because it was a really wet winter, there's going to be a lot of growth, and then it's going to dry out, in the course of the spring. There's going to be a terrible fire. Of course, if it doesn't rain in the winter, what does that mean? It's going to be a terrible fire season. But a couple of years ago, it seemed like the whole world was on fire. You had that fire in the rainforest in Indonesia, and seemed like Australia was on fire. And when Australia wasn't on fire, the whole Western United States was on fire. The Forest Service and all the fire services around the country couldn't keep up with the fires. California, they're always worried about an earthquake. So, we always know it's going to happen. In Hawaii, we had a hurricane. Had hurricanes in August. Passed a couple hundred miles south of the islands, and we had for 5 days, I think, sustained winds of 50 to 60 miles an hour with gusts of up to 80. And then right during during all those winds, we had those wildfires that burned down most of Lahaina. Really kind of sweet, although touristy, city on the west side of Maui. So many things going. And then the politics. Oh, I don't even want to talk about the politics. First of all, we got this election that nobody wanted this year, this rematch that nobody wanted. Two octogenarians running for president in the United States. And then political parties that are just, they can't get anything. They just can't work together anymore. These folks used to live, they used to have homes in the Washington, D.C. area. And I know because I grew up there, and some of these folks were my neighbors back then. They used to hang out together, from the different parties. They used to hang out together on the weekends and go to parties together and stuff. Now they won't even look at each other, much less talk to each other. They can't get anything done. And then you've got, the whole thing with Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Gaza. The Russian guys talking about using nuclear weapons if anybody tries to get in his. I mean, it's just, how do we endure? I mean, I remember once when our older daughter, our older daughter was maybe 2 years old, we heard this huge thunderclap. I mean, it was so loud that we were convinced for a couple of seconds that it was a nuclear explosion. And it so freaked us out. And I remember my wife looking at me thinking, she actually said out loud, why would we bring children into this world? This is a question that people are asking all the time, and it seems to be more. And now people are simply choosing not to. And Krishna asks rhetorically in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, how can there possibly be any happiness without peace? And I think that's a natural question. How do we be happy because we can't find a peaceful life? And so later in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives us what Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master, my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who brought this Bhakti Yoga movement to the rest of the world, brought it out of India and brought it to the rest of the world just about going on 60 years ago. What he called this one verse in the Bhagavad Gita at the end of the 5th chapter, he called it the peace formula. Have I talked about this verse here before? Okay, I hope not. Goodness, I hope not. At least not recently enough that anyone remembers. I mean, I was just, because I was reflecting on just what's going on in the world these days. And of course, listen, when I was a kid, we thought the world was mad. When I was in high school, we had that Cuban Missile Crisis. this was in the fall of 1962. I was 15, and I was in the music department at my high school, and we were working on the fall concert. And the choir that I was with, it was the elite choir in our high school. One of the songs that we were preparing for the fall concert was a song called "Let There Be Peace on Earth." Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our Father, brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Wow, I can't believe I remember that.
Yeah, that was good.
I think I'm doing better than Joe Biden or the other guy. And I remember thinking, this is so damned ironic. Just because I lived in the Washington, D.C. area, and we figured any day we could just disappear. We didn't, because there was one point during that crisis when I think historians have analyzed that we were about 17 minutes away from all-out nuclear war. And I'm starting to wonder if I guess there aren't any chairs. My old bones. my old bones are complaining already, and I've only been sitting here for 45 minutes. Oh, thanks. I guess yeah, closer.
Now you have to choose.
And then I have to get up in front of everyone. Don't watch. Oh, you know the song. Let there be peace on earth.
Can't remember it all.
Keep me awake. That's good.
Here, let's put it in the middle for you.
Where did I throw my book? Oh, there it is.
Let's get a stand.
I'm okay. I have a lap. So, that thing. So we thought it was a mess then, and things are at least as weird now. Maybe this is just the way the world has always been, and every day we think, oh my God, how could it get worse? Just like some of those TV shows, you come back each week because you're thinking, how could things get worse for these guys? Remember, my wife and I got addicted to a show uncharacteristically, because my wife is a very gentle person who can't stand violence and coarse language. But we got addicted to this show called The Shield. Anybody? I don't know if anybody's. I hope nobody's watched that. But it was these decent people who had become really rotten cops, and things just kept spiraling down over, I don't remember how many seasons now. And every week we went back to each week because we thought, how could it possibly get worse? So we kind of think that about the world, and then we managed to figure it out each month, how we can make it seem worse. So at the end of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells his friend Arjuna, this bhoktaram jagya tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva shantam richati. He says, wise sages who understand these three things can actually attain lasting peace. Bhoktaram jagya tapasam. That I, the absolute truth, am the real beneficiary of everything, that every good thing that anybody wants to do, including any sacrifices that you make, penances that austerities, penances that you do, just like people are fasting for Lent and Ramadan now, right? Ramadan began the other day. Those things are all really meant for me. And then he says, I am the real controller of all the universe. The whole cosmos belongs to me. So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, so what's left for me? Well, and he says, Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. He says, I am the dearest friend of every being. The word is suhrit. And our Srila Prabhupada explained on a couple of occasions, there are three kind of broad categories of friends. One is bandhu. That's an acquaintance. Maybe someone you work with or someone you play pickup basketball with or something. You know, you see them at the gym. Someone you go surfing with. Then there's mitra. Well, these are buddies. These are people you like to hang out with. And then he says there's suhrit. Su means good, or it's also an intensifier depending on the context. Suhrit and hrit comes from the root hrud, which is heart. So they have a good heart for us. So this is Krishna's position, that he actually is the absolutely infallible well-wisher of every living being. He wants only the best for everyone. And through his different kinds of energies, he makes arrangements for us to attain our whatever our desires are. Doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. It's always going to be fun. And sometimes there's an old song from an old musical called The Unsinkable Molly Brown, where the main character was singing to all these rich people of Denver back in the 19th century, you know, that they were complaining that God wasn't answering their prayers. And she said, are you sure your prayers haven't been answered? You pray for riches and glory, and he turns around and he makes you humble. But it's the humble, it's the meek who inherit the kingdom of God. And then there was one line that really struck me as a kid. My parents were real musical freaks. We had all the musicals that were, you know, from the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s. Whenever my dad would go to New York on business, he would take my mom with him. They would go see musicals on Broadway, and they saw this with the original cast live on Broadway, and we always had the album going. And there's one line in that really hit me even when I was like, whatever it was, 14, 15 years old. You got your answer. The answer was no. I mean, sometimes the answer is no, right? You know, you ask mom and dad, can I use the car tonight to go out with my friends? Not tonight. Oh, okay, there's problems, especially if you're 16 like I was. When I was 16, God. When my mom passed away, I missed the opportunity to tell her three things that I wanted to tell her. Thank you. I'm sorry for especially all that stuff when I was a teenager. And I love you. I knew she knew all those things, but I really I felt like I needed to say it. But so sometimes the answer is no. But Krishna really is everyone's well-wisher. He makes, especially for the long term, he makes the best arrangements for all of us. So, Bhoktaram Jagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. Well, if he has everything and he's our best friend, then whatever it is we actually need, we'll probably get it eventually. Especially if it's going to in the long term be good for us. So bhakti yoga on a personal level is meant to bring peace to our hearts. But as a movement, it also has a very strong promise of bringing peace to society. And there's two paragraphs that I'd like to share from the preface that His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada wrote to his presentation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita is it's a very well-known spiritual treatise. It's actually part of a larger work. It's all the 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita are actually, they constitute one chapter in this massive epic poem called Mahabharata. It has 100,000 verses. And the Bhagavad Gita itself is 700 of those verses. So, and sort of the postgraduate study to that is this text called Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 verses. And it really presents the philosophy and practice, in a sense, of bhakti yoga. So I just wanted to share these two paragraphs from this text. I hope you'll see where I'm going. Srila Prabhupada writes, "We must know the present need of human society. And what is that need? Human society is no longer bounded by geographical limits to particular countries or communities. Human society is broader than in the Middle Ages, and the world tendency is toward one state or one human society." Now, keep in mind, he wrote this about late 50s, so over 60 years ago, so over 65 years ago. The ideals of spiritual communism, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are based more or less on the oneness of the entire human society, nay, of the entire energy of living beings. The need is felt by great thinkers to make this a successful ideology. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need in human society. It begins, therefore, with the aphorism of Vedanta philosophy, Janmadyasya yataha, to establish the ideal of a common cause. Janmadyasya yataha means he from whom everything comes. So this common cause, this is actually the part of the formula for peace. And he continues, human society at the present moment is not in the darkness of oblivion. It has made rapid progress in the field of material comforts, education, and economic development throughout the entire world. But there's a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large. And therefore, there are large-scale quarrels, even over less important issues. There's a need of a clue as to how humanity can become one in peace, friendship, and prosperity with the common cause. Srimad Bhagavatam will fill this need, where it is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. So when Srila Prabhupada undertook translating Srimad Bhagavatam, he had this broad vision of human society and what would actually fulfill our needs as human beings. And he uses the phrase spiritual communism. So some people thought Srila Prabhupada was very conservative because, he grew up in Victorian and Edwardian India, and some of the cultural values that he brought with him were from there. Most of the cultural values he brought, though, were from Srimad Bhagavatam. And he used to comment about Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg was a prominent figure in, especially in early counterculture. He was a famous writer, poet from the Beat generation, one of the voices of the Beat generation. And he had been to India. He had been introduced to chanting mantras when he visited India. And when he saw Srila Prabhupada in the Lower East Side of New York City, and then later in San Francisco, like in 1967, early 1967, Srila Prabhupada went to San Francisco as kind of part of the it seemed to be part of the setup for that, what was called the Summer of Love. This is when hippies were actually kind of hippies, and before things got, well, weirder than they were at the beginning. I mean, we were pretty weird. We were plenty weird to start with, and things got kind of stranger over the next couple of years. I remember I was in San Francisco when I got out of the Navy in the summer of '69, just a couple of years later, going to the Haight-Ashbury, and I just thought, well, God, it's become kind of commercialized. And the only thing that I found really attractive in the Haight-Ashbury district was, as I walked down Frederick Street, was the Hare Krishna temple. But this fellow that I was with, when I said, "Oh, I want to check this place out," he said, "No, we're not going to do that." And I was staying with him at his sister's place near the Haight, so I had to kind of go along. But things were just weird. But Srila Prabhupada was there, kind of part of this whole counterculture thing, and Ginsberg was someone who kind of introduced Srila Prabhupada to the counterculture at the time. There's a really cute video of Ginsberg chanting Hare Krishna to William F. Buckley. I don't know if anyone here is old enough to remember who William F. Buckley was. He was the intellectual voice of the conservative movement, a conservative political movement in the United States at the time, during the 50s and 60s and 70s, even into the 70s, even later, even into the 80s, I think. And he had this interview show on what became the public broadcasting system, politics, culture, things like that. And he had Allen Ginsberg on once. I don't remember what year this was. And Ginsberg brought a little, really cheesy harmonium onto Buckley's show. And he didn't really play it. He just droned it. He just like pressed a couple of keys at random and just started droning it. And he chanted Hare Krishna to William F. Buckley. It's like this really weird moment, you know. But Buckley was cool. He didn't make any faces or anything. He always looked like he was looking down his nose at whoever he was with. So he just kind of sat there like Bill Buckley. And at the end, he just smiled and he said, "Well, that was the most Krishna I've ever heard." So Ginsberg was this big voice in the counterculture, and he considered Srila Prabhupada. He wrote an introduction to Bhagavad Gita as it is back when it was published in 1968, and he referred to Srila Prabhupada's Hindu granny wisdom. So he thought he was kind of quaint and a little conservative, and Prabhupada would say, "Mr. Ginsberg thinks that I am conservative. He doesn't know how liberal I am." And we can kind of see that here. Liberal, not so much in a political sense, but in a cultural sense, in a sense of really broad-minded. And so this is kind of a really amazing vision that we see here in this preface. And then later, when we get into the Bhagavatam itself, the second verse of the Bhagavatam, it explains, thank you so much, what the Bhagavatam is about, and also who's the most likely audience to appreciate it. And it describes that audience as satam, those whose hearts are actually pure. And how is it that their hearts are pure? Because they're completely free from envy. The Sanskrit word is nirmatsaranam, completely free of envy. And how is it that they're free of envy? They don't have a personal agenda at all. The Bhagavatam says, dharma prochita kaitavatra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. So these people who are completely free of envy and whose hearts are therefore completely pure, it's because they don't have their own personal agenda. They're not looking for any of the things that people are looking for in the world. Personal virtue, the kind of material progress you can make by being a virtuous person, the pleasure you can get from getting ahead in the world. And when you've kind of seen through the whole thing, wanting liberation, freedom. And the language that's used in this verse, it calls these things cheating dharma, kaitava dharma, cheating religion. So why is that cheating religion? Because that's kind of what religion's about. You know, people getting ahead in the world and then going to heaven or whatever. And it's because they're all driven by selfish desires. My virtue, my material progress, my pleasure, my freedom. So when we have a focus, when we have a focus that's actually selfless, we can find this common cause. And there's an example that Srila Prabhupada used in a talk that he gave when he visited Honolulu in May of 1972. One day he spoke at the Kennedy Auditorium at the University of Hawaii. And he gave the example of dropping a stone in a pond. So if you have a pond with a still surface, you drop a stone in that pond. On the surface, you're going to see these concentric circles generated from that point. You know, and it's a nice, peaceful, maybe even meditative thing. I remember when my daughter got her first iPhone years ago. I mean, she must have had an early iPhone. She had some app on it that was like a pond with like smooth, round stones in the bottom. And if you put your finger on the screen, you'd see ripples going out across the screen, like you stuck your fingers in some water. And you go in like that, and you know, you'd see half ripples going out. So it's a kind of a peaceful pattern. But if I drop that stone and then I drop another stone in another place, that's also going to generate some concentric ripples until they run into the ripples coming from the other rock, right? And then you'll get some turbulence on the surface. And if you drop a third, fourth, fifth, the 12th, 117th, then you've got a chaotic pattern on the surface of the pond. But if you take all those 117 stones and drop them in the same point, you just have a continuous pattern of concentric circles, all having the same center. And that's the kind of society that Srimad Bhagavatam suggests. In his purport, in his commentary on that verse in the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada says that the problems we have are caused by our competing with each other for nature's resources. We're all, you know, just humans against humans, animal against animal, nation against nation. We're all competing for the resources of material nature of one sort or another, gross or subtle. Either stuff, land, gold, oil, shipping lanes, or whatever, or just sometimes prestige, position, girls, men, whatever, you know, trophies. And that's the cause of our problem. But he says that the transcendental devotees of the Lord not only aren't competing with others for these resources of nature, but they strive instead to create a competition-less society with the absolute truth in the center, with God in the center. And I remember when I read that beginning of 1970, I realized that I had found the revolution we were all looking for back then. And that was kind of like I was trending towards bhakti yoga. I was interested. I was thinking at that, before I read that, I was thinking, yeah, you know, I'll try to understand this and I'll just share it with the people I hang out with. And when I read that sentence in that commentary, I realized this is the revolution we've all been looking for, and I'm going to I'm going to work for this, to advance this revolution. So I've been trying to do that for the last 55 years. So this is really what it all boils down to. And when we look at the culmination of the Bhagavatam, of the Bhagavad Gita, what the Bhagavad Gita really proposes at the end, and Krishna tells Arjuna twice. He tells him both in the middle of the Gita, and then again in the last chapter, especially as we're moving toward the end of the last chapter. So we talked about so many secret things, so many confidential things up to this point. Now we're going to talk about the most confidential of confidential things. It's kind of like he's telling him, buckle up, because things are going to get really interesting now. And what does he say? He says, same thing he says at the end of the 9th chapter, right in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Manmana, engage your mind in thinking about me. Bhava madbhakta, become my devotee. Dedicate your life to my service. Madhyaji, worship me. And your obeisance, your loyalty, give that to me as well. And then he tells us practically in the next verse how to do that. He's made arguments with he's kind of engaged in a protracted argument with Arjuna over the course of 600 odd verses in the Gita. And then he says, whatever we've discussed, just kind of set it aside, forget it. No, he says even more than that. Just completely reject it. Any conventional sense of Dharma, just reject it and take shelter in me alone. And then the Bhagavatam starts there with that. Having done so, now we've got something to talk about. People whose hearts can actually be peaceful because they don't have a personal agenda. And this manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, if you boil that down, it really amounts to just love me. Because that's how we behave with people we love. We think about them all the time. Sometimes we actually worship them. You'd have a picture of your girlfriend in the inside of your locker or something like that, or your wife and your kids on your desk. This is why I'm here, slogging away 12, 13, 14 hours a day, hour and a half on the freeway. It's for the wife and kids. And then she's at home working her okole off, keeping the house going, keeping the kids from going crazy, and just creating helping to create a family. And then the kids are just, well, when they're about to turn 1, they're just unbearably cute. Then when they're 2, they're kind of cute, except when they're not. And then when they're 16, if they're like me, they're just a pain in the neck. But so this is, and what we want is a complete society. We don't need everybody to live like me, just wandering around the world, hearing about Krishna's glories and sharing them with whoever will sit long enough to hear them. But if our lives, however we live our lives, have that same focus, then we can have a more peaceful society. And it's because it's going to be based on love. All you need is love. Da, 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 right? And that's really what it adds up to. I have a friend who he lives in Florida now, but I've known him for a number of years. Really smart guy, huge soft heart, very loving. Oh, and his wife is like concentrated love herself. You're almost afraid you're going to get diabetes just being in the same county with her. And he's this really smart, really clever guy, an amazing musician. And he had a post on Facebook a few days ago with something like, what's your elevator pitch? How would you tell people in the time it takes to go 3 floors on the elevator what you do, what your life's about? And that was that came out of a conversation he had in an elevator the day before. He was going up to the 3rd floor, and somebody asked him, "What do Hare Krishnas believe in anyway?" And his response was, "We believe in love. And if that love is pure enough, it can even influence the creator." Ding. That's it. And I've decided to adopt that. I'm going to have to pay him royalties, I guess, for the rest of my life, but I'm happy with that. He's worth it. So that's really what Bhakti Yoga is about. And that's what we can experience when we chant like we were chanting, a little while ago, just an hour or so ago. We're all kind of, we're sharing our hearts, we're certainly sharing our breath. And in some cultures, especially some shamanic cultures, that's a big thing. Hawaiians, they would greet each other by putting their Samoans as well, right? Samoans, they're like, Hawaiians would put their foreheads together. I think Samoans, their forehead and their nose, and literally share their breath. Aloha, right? In Hawaiian, ha means breath. So we're sharing our breath, and we're literally doing that. That's why they wouldn't let us do it during that damn pandemic, right? Because we were sharing our breaths, and there was a little, apparently a little dangerous, I guess. Listen, if you're going to go, why not go? Why not go sharing love like that? So that's basically what we're about, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to get together with folks like you. I guess I'm going on a little long because I'm losing the crowd. People apparently have stuff to do tomorrow. So I'll just stop here, and I'll see if there are any, ask if there are any comments. Anybody has anything they'd like to share, or any questions or anything.
Well, I'll say one thing. Kirtaneswar, you go on and on and on and on. So if there's more to say, just keep going. Don't feel like you have to stop.
There was there's a devotee, very famous all over the world for his kirtan. His name's Madhava. He's from Mauritius, from an Indian family from Mauritius. And his slogan, I don't know I guess he still uses it, but his slogan was Kirtan forever. There was the community in Alachua, Florida, every Thanksgiving week, they have a kind of a week-long festival that culminates in 2 days of 12 hours of kirtan straight through, called the Festival of the Holy Names. And every year they have a theme, and then they've got swag that they sell. Merch.
In Alachua or in Gainesville?
In Alachua. But the two communities are actually connected, closely connected. But the festival's held next to the temple in Alachua. So every year they have a theme, and then they have their swag or merch connected with that theme. And one year, a few years ago, the theme was, "This is what we do." And I just liked that. And I thought, dang, I wish I were there then. I would have bought like 2 T-shirts. I would have bought a tote bag. I would have bought a ball cap, whatever. Would have bought everything. I just really like that. This is what we do. I met a devotee when I was in Texas last fall. We were having conversation at breakfast, and she's kind of taken responsibility for overseeing the operations of all the Krishna temples in Texas. Really nice woman. Her name is Prabhupada Priya, about maybe 40 or 45 years old. And she was saying that, because she has all this responsibility, she was at a kirtan retreat. And one of the rules was no phones. Don't even bring your phone. And she was worried because, oh God, I'm going to be missing emails and text messages and phone calls, and there's problems that need to be solved right now. And she was confiding in one of the leaders that this worry of hers, and he just smiled at her and he says, no, 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 no. We do all that stuff so we can do this. You know, we take care of all that other stuff so we can get together and do this. And this is the real thing, when we're together and we're really sharing our hearts without any inhibitions, just cut loose. And yeah, so anyway, I'm just really grateful to have shared this with you.
We sure enjoy Friday nights going on.
I've been there. I've done it. Yeah, it's fun.
The last one we were able to do. That was so exciting. Really good.
Yeah. In Honolulu, we like to, New Year's Eve, if you can stay up that late. I'm getting close to 30, so it's getting harder to do that. What? Still funny, huh? But we like, and Halloween as well. Halloween is a hoot. Yes.
What do you think the odds are that the world would actually unite like the bottom of the top? Do you think that's something that will actually happen?
It's possible, but you know, we have to actually dedicate ourselves to effecting that, to bringing that about. You know, we have to be the catalyst. It's not going to happen automatically. I mean, if you had told us, say, 1870 in Honolulu, you know, if you said, no, you know, we're going to have, there's going to be tens of thousands of Hare Krishna devotees in Russia, we would have said, yeah, maybe. But, you know, really, the Soviet Union? Give me a break. Come on. Or in the Middle East, you know, on the Arabian Peninsula, or China. Even when my spiritual master went to the West, his contemporaries, his spiritual brothers, thought he was a little extreme. Well, Lord Chaitanya said, oh, this will happen in every town and village. As many towns and villages as there are in the world, my name will be heard. And they thought, yeah, well, look, that book was written in poetry. And one of the ornaments of poetry, one of the features of poetry is hyperbole. You know, you may exaggerate a little bit for effect. And a couple of them even admitted that. We thought, yeah, okay, that's really cool to say, but not really going to happen. He just did it. You know, he talked to the woman who owned a steamship line into giving him a room on a freighter to New York City. He didn't have any money. He had, what is it, $7-8 or something, and some boxes of his translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he just came on faith. He just came on faith and did it at the age of 70. Oh dear. Okay. That is the hook. That's the trap door. Suck it to me. Is that okay? I mean, it could possibly happen. It's a little hard for us to see how it could happen. But I mean, goodness sake, you know, if someone had said, well, we would have believed maybe a temple in Tucson, Arizona. I think some devotees might have come here in the late 60s. There were devotees in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the late 60s, but it didn't last. But you know, that we would have a place like this, and then the way it's going to be in Tucson, Arizona, in the middle of, I mean, this godforsaken place. A lot of people would, you know, probably thought of this like that. But look what we have. We have this beating heart. I mean, you know, you all know the devotees here. You know what they're like. Yes.
I just have a question kind of along the same lines of what you're talking about. I mean, I randomly discovered seeing, well, Hare Krishna and the Hanuman Chalisa specifically, just kind of by accident. I'm from the middle of South Dakota.
There you
I
go.
was singing it by myself for a long time. Couldn't get anybody to, no one else got it. I don't know why I did and not a single clue. But anyway, I was wondering if you could just speak to like how it can affect someone who has no cultural background with it at all, how that even works or why, or it's just been strange to me.
Well, one explanation is that the sound vibration itself is spiritual. It's from the spiritual plane, and it carries love in it, and it acts on the heart. I mean, talk about no cultural background. I'm from a family that's been exploiting North America since at least 1634. The first of our, of our immediate lineage in our family, we were tracing back to someone 16 that came to Boston in 1634 from England. And not all nice people. My great-great-grandfather founded this little town on the central coast of California where my family is my dad's family is kind of from. I'm a kid from Lompoc, California, for goodness sake. My great-great-grandfather was, when he graduated from college in Massachusetts, the first job he had was teaching on a plantation in South Carolina. And he thought that the economic model there was pretty cool. So some of us cousins, when we discovered his letters and he wrote about that, we just thought, oh my God, this is our great-great-grandpa. And, he thought slavery was great. God help. And the town that he founded was started as a temperance colony. So, somebody may say, okay, South Dakota, maybe not so sophisticated people, in California, maybe more sophisticated. Not us. We're just folks. But it's because there are other kind of like other understandings as well. Perhaps in previous lives we had some exposure and just needed to come in contact with it, and the kind of spark got lit again. But the essential explanation is that this is the sound vibration itself is a spiritual sound vibration from the spiritual plane, and it's just constituted of love, and it's infectious.
I found that to be true.
Yeah, me too. Like a virus, it's a good virus. It's like John Lewis used to talk about making good trouble. This is a good virus, and we want to spread it as widely as we can. Thank you. Oh yes. What's your name? Oh gosh, yeah. I think we talked about this last time. Yeah, actually, Sarah's staying at the Honolulu Temple again.
Yeah.
And she's going to be coming to the mainland. She's going to San Diego.
Yeah.
And so
backpacking in South America.
Yeah, she had her adventure in South America. She got that out of her system. Yeah. She'll be coming to San Diego in maybe a week and a half. She'll be there for a week.